I walked in, exhausted from a long day, expecting nothing more than a quiet evening. Instead, I was met with an eerie silence, one that didn't belong in my home. My mother, my wife, my sons, and my best friend Peter sat on the couch, their faces unreadable, their eyes carefully avoiding mine. Something was off. This wasn't the usual tension that sometimes lingered when I came home late. It wasn't the faint, burnt smell from Doris's failed cooking attempts. It wasn't even the way my son sat stiffly as if bracing for impact. No, this was something deeper, something deliberate. I set my briefcase down, rolling my shoulders as I tried to read the air. "What's wrong?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. No one answered right away. The hesitation sent a ripple of unease through me. Then my eldest son, Michael, cleared his throat and spoke words I would never forget. "Dad, sit down. You need to accept a new reality. You're not in charge of this family anymore. Uncle Peter is more like a father to us now." The words sliced through me. I blinked, convinced I had misheard. "Excuse me." My voice was too calm for the fire that suddenly roared inside my chest. Michael wouldn't look at me. His fingers drummed against his knee, a nervous tic he had since childhood. But I wasn't focused on him anymore. My eyes were locked on the one person who should have stopped this. Doris. She sat there, hands neatly folded in her lap, her expression unreadable. Not shocked, not apologetic, just neutral. He knew. They all did. My mother exhaled quietly, shifting in her seat as if this moment had been inevitable. No surprise. No outrage. Just silent complicity. Peter, my so-called best friend, didn't flinch. His posture remained relaxed, as if this was just another business meeting. He looked comfortable. Too comfortable, like he belonged there, like he had been in my seat for a while. The realization hit like a hammer to the chest. This wasn't new. This wasn't spontaneous. This had been planned. I stared at my sons, searching for any sign of hesitation, any flicker of regret. But Michael was resolute. And Eric, my younger son, though silent, didn't look away. He didn't deny it. I took a slow, measured breath, forcing down the molten rage bubbling beneath my skin. I had spent years mastering control, negotiating with ruthless men, dismantling their arguments with precision. But this wasn't a legal battle. This was war. And I had walked straight into an ambush. "Peter is more like a father to you?" I repeated, my voice disturbingly even. Michael nodded, his jaw tightening. "Yeah." I still didn't look at Peter. I wasn't ready to acknowledge him. Not yet. Instead, I turned back to Doris. "Doris," I said, my voice laced with something sharp, something lethal. "Is there anything you'd like to add?" For the first time, her composure cracked. She inhaled sharply, smoothing down the fabric of her dress as if that could erase the weight of her betrayal. She wasn't ready for this conversation. That was my first victory. "I think it's best if we all—" I held up a hand, cutting her off. "No. No rehearsed speeches. No empty deflections. Tell me, Doris, when exactly did my role as your husband and their father expire? Was it gradual, or did you make the decision in a single night while lying in my bed?" Her lips parted, but no words came out. That was my second victory. She hadn't expected resistance. She had thought I would explode. Or break. Instead, I was calculating. Controlled. And then finally I turned to Peter. Peter, the man I had trusted with everything. The man who had been there for the birth of my children, who had toasted at my wedding, who had celebrated my victories and grieved my losses. The man I had called my brother. And now he sat in my house, in my presence, waiting for me to acknowledge that he had won. He was waiting for me to lose control. I smiled, a slow, unsettling smile. The kind that made opposing lawyers nervous in the courtroom. Peter's confidence faltered. That was my third victory. I exhaled, stepping back, straightening my cuffs like this entire situation was nothing more than an interesting footnote in my evening. The room felt suffocating, the walls closing in, but I wouldn't let them see it. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of knowing they had wounded me. Instead, I turned toward the door. "You have something to say?" Peter finally spoke, his voice smooth, controlled, cocky. I paused, tilting my head slightly, letting the silence stretch, letting the tension coil. Then I chuckled, a low, knowing chuckle. That was my fourth victory. Without another word, I walked out. Because tonight wasn't the night I lost. No. Tonight was the night I prepared. And by the time they realized what was coming, it would be far too late. I closed the door behind me, pausing in the hallway, listening. No one spoke. Then a shift. The sound of movement. A relieved exhale. They thought I was gone. That was my confirmation. They had expected an explosion. A desperate plea for answers. But they didn't understand who I was. I walked down the hall, past framed family photos that suddenly felt like mockery. Frozen lies. Staged happiness. The illusion of loyalty. My wife. My mother. My sons. Peter. The betrayal wasn't what stunned me most. No. It was how normal they made it seem. They had decided without me. They had moved on without me. I entered my study, shutting the door behind me with the same eerie calm I had maintained in the living room. I sank into my chair, leaning back, fingers laced together as I exhaled. The rage sat there waiting. It begged to be unleashed. It demanded destruction. I could storm back in, flip the table, smash the glasses, drag Peter outside and introduce his smug face to the pavement. But violence is fleeting. Pain fades. Bruises heal. Revenge should be permanent. And for that, I needed patience. The pieces were falling into place. I had ignored the signs, not because I was blind, but because I had chosen to trust. My mother's influence had always been strong. Too strong. She had chosen Doris for me. Not directly. Not explicitly. But she had shaped. The narrative had always painted Doris as inevitable. The perfect wife, the ideal woman, someone who would build a life with me. And for a while it was true. Doris was all those things until she wasn't. Until she decided that being my wife wasn't enough anymore. I leaned forward, fingers tapping lightly against my desk. Peter. Of all the men in the world, why him? Infidelity had always been a possibility I considered. An occupational hazard when you're a lawyer. You witness too many marriages crumble, too many betrayals, too many quiet affairs unfolding behind closed doors. I had convinced myself that if it ever happened to me, I would know, I would sense it. But I hadn't. Because this wasn't a singular betrayal. It had been a transition, a slow, calculated replacement. A carefully orchestrated coup. Their mistake? They miscalculated. They mistook my silence for acceptance. They assumed I was too old to fight back, too invested to walk away. What they didn't realize was that I was already gone. Not physically, at least not yet, but mentally, emotionally I had detached. And once a man stops caring, once he stops believing there is anything left to salvage, he becomes dangerous. That was their first mistake. The second, believing I had nothing left to lose. They thought they had taken everything from me. They forgot I was a lawyer. And power isn't about emotions. It's about leverage. And I had leverage far beyond their imagination. The plan took shape. I pulled my phone from my pocket and scrolled through my contacts. The first call went to my financial advisor. "James," I said, my voice steady, "effective immediately, freeze all funds in our joint accounts." Pause. "Sir, are you sure? That would include your wife's access." "I know exactly what it includes." "Understood." First move made. Next I dialed my lawyer. "Stan," I said, my voice even smoother now, "I need an expedited divorce filing. Non-negotiable. I want it done today." Pause. Said, "I'll have the paperwork ready by morning." Second move made. Finally I called an old friend. Someone who owed me favors. Someone who specialized in ruining people. With that, the wheels were in motion. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of what was coming. They thought they had won. They thought I had walked away licking my wounds. But I wasn't running. I was preparing. And by the time they realized it, it would be too late. The next morning the storm arrived, not with thunder or lightning but with silence. It began when Doris tried to make an online transfer. Maybe a bill payment, maybe another unnecessary splurge on a boutique purchase. Instead of the transaction going through, the screen blinked red. Transaction declined. She frowned, refreshed the page. Same message. She tried again on her phone, switching between accounts. Declined. Doris wasn't foolish. She knew something was wrong. Grabbing her coat, she slid into the Mercedes I had bought her for her birthday and drove straight to the bank. That's where reality finally slapped her in the face. The accounts are frozen, the bank manager explained, shifting uncomfortably behind his desk. Yes, Doris snapped, irritation rising. What's the issue? There's a security hold? Remove it. The manager hesitated. I'm afraid that won't be possible. Her eyes narrowed. And why not? A slow breath. He clearly wished he wasn't the one delivering the news. Because your husband issued a freeze on all joint accounts. His lawyer provided the necessary documents. Legally, we cannot grant you access without his authorization. Doris's breath hitched. That's ridiculous. I've had access to these accounts for years. Yes, ma'am, the manager said politely. And now you don't. A slow, creeping horror filled her eyes. The truth sank in, deep and unforgiving. I had cut her off completely. He never thought I would do it. Not after all these years. Not after everything we had built. He thought I would crumble. Instead, I let them starve. By the time she stormed out of the bank, she was already calling Peter, hands trembling. I imagine the conversation went something like this. Peter, he froze everything. What do we do? But Peter had his own problems. While she panicked at the bank, I moved on to phase 2, her credit cards. One by one, I shut down every financial line she had access to. By the time she tried using her platinum card at a cafe, it was declined. She tried another. Declined. The emergency one she kept in her purse? Declined. And that was when fear truly set in. Peter's downfall unfolded simultaneously. His business thrived because of me. Not because of his intelligence, not because he was a financial genius, but because I had pulled the strings. I had secured clients, investors, opportunities. And now I was pulling them all away. One by one, his key investors backed out. The construction firm that had funneled him work for years suddenly canceled all contracts. Then came an email from his biggest supplier. Due to unforeseen circumstances, we regret to inform you that we are terminating our partnership effective immediately. Peter didn't know it yet, but his business had mere hours to live. By lunchtime, 2 more investors had walked away. By dinner, his cash flow was choking. And when he finally checked his own accounts, he found them in the red. I hadn't just cut him out of my life. I had cut off his survival. While they fell apart, my sons Michael and Eric were about to face their own reckoning. They never truly appreciated the life I provided. The Ivy League tuition, the luxury cars in their driveways. All because of me. And yet they turned their backs on me. They called Peter Dad. They replaced me before I had even left that house. So I gave them exactly what they wanted. A life without me. The first thing to go. Their tuition payments. Michael, in the middle of his master's program, received a notice. Your tuition bill is past due. If not paid within 7 days, your enrollment will be suspended. Eric, accustomed to his carefree lifestyle, found his monthly allowance had vanished. No warning, no explanation. Just gone. They called their bank. Just like their mother, they got the same cold response. Your father has revoked all access to these funds. You no longer have authorization. Panic ensued. By evening, the phone calls started. Doris, Michael, Eric, Peter, even my mother, the woman who raised me, the one who orchestrated half of this betrayal, called. I didn't answer a single one. Not yet. Not until they had fully realized what had happened. Not until it was too late. They hadn't truly felt the loss until the moment they realized with absolute certainty that the man they had dismissed, the one they had so easily replaced, was the very reason they had anything to begin with. By nightfall I could picture them sitting in that same living room, the very place where they had made their fateful decision. But this time the air was different. This time they were no longer in control. They were drowning and I was watching them sink. Meanwhile, Peter sat in his office, sipping his usual overpriced coffee, blissfully unaware that his world was crumbling. For years he had built his business not on hard work or intelligence but on connections. And those connections, they were mine. From the moment he launched his so-called company, he had leaned on my influence, my clients, my investors, my reputation. And I had helped him, I had built him, because at the time he was more than a friend, he was like a brother to me. But now I was going to dismantle everything he had. The first sign of trouble arrived in the form of an email. Subject: contract termination. Peter skimmed through the message, his forehead creasing. Due to unforeseen financial circumstances, we regret to inform you that our ongoing contract with your firm is terminated, effective immediately. His jaw clenched. The sender? One of his biggest investors. The one keeping his cash flow steady. He set his phone down, running a hand through his hair, trying to shake off the unease creeping up his spine. This was nothing. A misunderstanding. Something that could be fixed with a quick phone call. He dialed immediately, forcing a smile when his contact answered. "Hey Chris, just saw the email. What's going on?" A long pause. Then a sigh. "Peter, I'm sorry man. But we can't be involved with you anymore." Peter's grip on the phone tightened. What's changed since last week?" Another beat of silence. Then came the words that made his stomach drop. "David." Everything went cold. Peter swallowed hard. "What about him?" Chris hesitated before lowering his voice. "Look, I don't know what happened between you two, but let's just say he's making it clear that doing business with you isn't a smart move." Peter shot up from his chair, knocking his coffee onto his desk. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "David wouldn't do that, he's n." Chris cut him off. "He's a powerful man, Peter. Respected. And between you and me, if I had to choose between keeping business with him or with you." Pause. "I'd pick him every time." The line went dead. Peter stood frozen, the phone still pressed against his ear long after the call ended. Oh, this wasn't possible. David was many things, calculated, strategic, even ruthless in court. But he wasn't the kind of man who would destroy someone's life. Was he? His phone rang again. Another investor. The same message. Then another. And another. By noon, 4 major clients had pulled out. By 3 p.m. his suppliers stopped taking his calls. By 5 p.m. his entire business was gasping for air. And then came the final fatal blow. Still reeling, Peter barely noticed when his secretary stepped into his office, her face pale. "Sir," she said hesitantly, "we just received a notice from the licensing board." He looked up, stomach twisting. "What?" She swallowed hard and placed the document on his desk. Slowly, Peter picked it up and read the first line. "Effective immediately, the following business licenses have been revoked due to legal concerns regarding conflicts of interest and ethical violations." The rest of the words blurred. His business was dead. Officially. Legally. Irrevocably. Realization hit. He sank back into his chair, his breathing shallow. This wasn't bad luck. This was a precision strike. A targeted attack. And there was only one man capable of executing something like this. David. His old friend. His brother. The man he had betrayed. And now Peter was learning the hard way that David didn't just get even, he made sure you never got back up. By the time Peter gathered his thoughts, he had 69 missed calls. Half were from Doris. The rest? Investors, employees, clients. All panicked, scrambling to understand what was happening. Through it all, David hadn't answered once. Peter gritted his teeth and dialed again. Straight to voicemail. The same message that had played every single time that day. You've reached David Lanning. I'm unavailable. Leave a message. Beep. Peter exhaled sharply, gripping the phone. David, he started, his voice strained. I don't know what you're doing, but you need to stop. Silence. He swallowed hard. We need to talk. Just call me back, okay? This has gone far enough. Call ended. Message ignored. Peter stared at his phone, his heart pounding. For the first time in his life he was afraid. Because David wasn't just angry. He wasn't just retaliating. He was erasing Peter from existence. And there was absolutely nothing Peter could do to stop it. That evening the house was too quiet. Doris sat in the living room, gripping her phone so tightly her knuckles turned white. The dim glow of the lamp barely illuminated the worry etched across her face. She had called David. And again. No answer. Across the room, Michael sat stiffly on the couch, staring at his laptop screen. A frozen notification. Urgent. Tuition payment past due. Immediate payment required. Eric, on the other hand, paced the floor. He was never one to sit still when things went wrong. And right now, nothing was going their way. No one wanted to say it out loud. Because that would mean admitting it. Admitting that David had done the impossible. That he had ripped their entire foundation apart. Michael hadn't spoken in over an hour. Not since he checked his student portal. Not since he saw the bright red notice at the top of the screen. His tuition had always been paid in advance. It wasn't something he ever had to think about. But now, the money was gone. His father had pulled everything. He thought back to what they had said last night. Uncle Peter is more like a father to us now. His stomach twisted. He had chosen wrong. When the house phone rang, the entire room stilled. Doris snatched it up, almost dropping it. David, she breathed. But the voice on the other end wasn't his. It was her mother. And her tone was cold. Doris, Margaret said sharply. Are you sitting down? Doris frowned, gripping the phone tighter. What's wrong? Margaret exhaled, bracing herself. Then she said the words that made Doris's vision blur. Your father's retirement fund is gone. Doris's throat went dry. What? She whispered. Margaret's voice was steady, unyielding. I checked this morning. The accounts, the ones David managed for us, they're empty. Every last cent. Doris couldn't breathe. But that's not possible, she choked out. David wouldn't. Oh, wouldn't he? Margaret's voice was sharp as a blade. As I think he would. And I think he just did. At that moment, Doris finally understood. David hadn't just retaliated. He had made sure they would never recover. He had simply removed himself, and in doing so he had destroyed everything. He had let them make their choice, and then he had shown them what that choice cost. And now, as she sat there gripping her phone like a lifeline, Doris finally understood the brutal truth. David wasn't coming back. He wasn't going to save them. He wasn't going to fix it. And for the first time in her life she realized she had never actually known him. She had known the version of David who did everything for them. The version who loved her unconditionally. The version who never fought back. But the real David was the man who was watching them crumble and wasn't lifting a single finger to stop it. That night, as Doris lay awake staring at the ceiling, she thought about how quickly everything had fallen apart. A single night. That's all it had taken. Yesterday she had everything. Today she had nothing. And worst of all, she had no one to blame but herself. Doris had never known fear like this. Not when she was a broke college student struggling through finals. Not when she was a young mother overwhelmed with twins crying through the night. Not even when she realized she no longer loved her husband the way she once had. Oh, this fear was different. Because this time it wasn't just about her. This time she had lost everything. And worse. She didn't know how to fix it. The house was in chaos. Her sons were panicking. Her mother was calling non-stop. Peter had gone silent. And the only person who could fix it, the man she had betrayed, wasn't answering her calls. She tried one more time. The phone rang and rang before going straight to voicemail. You've reached David Landon. I'm unavailable. Leave a message. Doris clenched her jaw, fighting the burn in her throat. He was ignoring her. He tried texting. No response. She emailed. Nothing. Desperation took over. She picked up the house phone. Surely he wouldn't ignore a call from home. But he did. And that's when she knew. This wasn't a game. David wasn't coming back. Michael and Eric had never worried about money before. It had always been there. Till now. Until their father, the man they had dismissed, replaced, mocked, had taken it all away. And they weren't handling it well. I don't understand, Michael muttered, pacing. He can't just cut us off like this, can he? Eric scoffed. Yeah, genius. He just did. Michael ran a hand through his hair. Okay, but Mom, he won't let us go homeless, right? He won't just abandon us. Doris swallowed hard. She wanted to say no. She wanted to tell them David would come back. But the words wouldn't come, because she wasn't sure anymore. Eric grabbed his phone. Screw this. I'm calling him myself. Voicemail. Michael tried next. Voicemail. Then they tried begging. Dad, come on. We were just upset. We didn't mean it. You're still our father, okay? Just call us back. Dad, please. We're sorry. Dad, we need you. But David never answered. And the silence hurt more than anything he could have said. She knew what she had to do. She had to see him. Force him to listen. Force him to forgive her. So she got in her car, the one David had bought her, and drove straight to his office. But when she arrived, the receptionist wouldn't let her through. I'm sorry, Mrs. Landon, the woman said, her voice carefully neutral. Mr. Landon has given explicit instructions not to see you. Doris's stomach dropped. Not to see her? Her own husband? She forced a smile. Maybe you misunderstood. We're married. He'll see me. The receptionist hesitated. Then, with quiet sympathy, she handed Doris an envelope. Doris took it with trembling fingers, her heart hammering. She stepped aside, ripped it open, and pulled out a single document. A divorce petition. Filed. Signed. Ready. A note was attached. 5 simple words. There's nothing left to fix. Doris couldn't breathe. She had lost. And David had already moved on. That night, when Doris got home, her mother was waiting. Margaret sat in the living room, hands clasped, watching as Doris stumbled through the door, shell-shocked. She already knew. Doris could see it in her eyes, the disappointment, the resignation, the judgment. I told you to be careful, Margaret said, her voice calm but sharp. Doris let out a bitter laugh. Careful? Careful about what, Mother? Margaret exhaled, shaking her head. About underestimating a man like David. Doris clenched her fists. You told me. I told you that men adjust, Margaret interrupted smoothly. I told you that your father adjusted. That doesn't mean David would. She gave Doris a long, cold look. I told you what you needed to do to keep him. And instead you let your pride ruin everything. Doris gritted her teeth. I just wanted my freedom. Margaret nodded. And now you have it. Tell me, how does it feel? Doris said nothing. Because the answer felt like hell. By midnight, Peter finally cracked. His business was gone. His finances were in ruins. His best friend had destroyed him. And for the first time he realized why. Because he deserved it. David had trusted him. David had built him. And he had betrayed that trust. But he wasn't going to accept this. So he did the one thing he had left. He drove to David's house, stormed up the front steps, and pounded on the door. David, he shouted. Come out and face me. Silence. Then slowly the front door opened. And there David stood, calm, unbothered, cold. Peter's rage faltered. Because the man standing in front of him wasn't angry. He wasn't screaming. He wasn't out for revenge. He had already won. And Peter was already finished. David tilted his head slightly. "What exactly do you want, Peter?" he asked, voice calm. Peter swallowed. "You ruined me." David nodded. "Yes." Peter's hands clenched. "You had no right." David stepped forward, his voice quiet but lethal. "I had every right." And Peter, for the first time in his life, felt fear. Because David wasn't just getting even. He was making sure Peter never got up again.